Quite quite glaring how they're not covering the Iranian Revolution at all. So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, so we got the live stream going. We need the air horn to make it official. Here we go. Thursday, October 20th. Top story: CoinGecko. The Aptos token fell 40% on its first day of trading. Aptos Layer 1 blockchain was panned for opaque tokenomics and low transaction throughput. Sounds like it's going to be a slow tech news day as well. iFixit's Google Pixel Watch teardown is the number two story. It's officially a slow news day. The
Have
back.
you actually gone to see the Pixel? Like you said, you were going to go and try to hold it in your hand or whatever. Did you have an opportunity to do that yet?
No, I watched the announcement a week ago. I've read the reviews. It's a glorified Fitbit. I have no. It doesn't do anything. These special use cases that I talked about, it isn't really doesn't really have any that are compelling enough to purchase it. So there you go.
Okay.
The the back plate can be replaced, as can the display. Wow, this is turning into the slowest news day ever. Google unveils Android 13 Go edition, which is what Google announced and detailed Android 13 Go edition today with several sizable changes to the user experience. What is the Go edition? Does anyone really care? I don't know.
Yeah,
Intel
but
Rap
Tyler, my question is our source AI not working well?
or what?
Is our news source AI algorithm not working well today?
Well, is the news source the BBC? If so, all going to be about Liz Truss.
Right. No, CNN and BBC both had the same top story about the UK Prime Minister resigning. And the third tech story is about the Intel Raptor Lake Core i9. Who gives a shit? Then the next is from The Verge, an interview with Signal president on competition, RCS, government pressure to break encryption. That's kind of interesting. What it's like to hire a new CEO and more. Next, Meta AI unveils an open source translator for spoken but unwritten languages, which currently translates one sentence at a time between Hokkien and English. So languages that have no right. Nearly half of the world's 7,000 known languages exist without an accompanying written component.
Wow, Hokkien to English.
So now people who have languages that can't be written can now do translation.
Tyler, I have a theory that it is recession, and in a recession, people lay off their PR first. And so that's why it's a slow news day. All the PR people are gone,
Oh, that's interesting.
and the marketing people, and people are like heads down and building because their marketing departments have all been laid off or not given enough support. So there's not going to be a lot of news for
But
the
aren't those
next
people the
six,
ones? But aren't
the
those
next
the
six
people who drive
months.
sales though? Or would you say it
Yes,
depends on the sector?
yes, and yes, and as a person who's owned three marketing companies, I've argued that for my whole life. But that doesn't mean that that's how the business side of the house looks at it. They lay off, they lay off marketing and they lay off PR, and they focus on engineer and product. And in Web3, that's exactly what they're doing.
I would say that it's a slow news day because we're at the very beginning of earnings seasons, depending on what the earnings calendar looks like. It's right now, it's very early, and people are waiting on the Fed. And so you just have the calm before the storm, so to speak. That's all that's going on.
And they're not mutually exclusive, obviously.
By the way, Tyler, are you muted? By the way, Hokkien is a Chinese dialect. It's
Yeah.
actually able. I mean, they can write it, but it's just that it's not pronounced in the normal, like common Chinese Mandarin language.
And by the way, actually, it's you can say it shared a
Dialect.
common source of Taiwanese. So the
Yes.
one, the technician, responsible for this, video that Zuckerberg would, he's a Taiwanese, as from Taiwan. He's not Taiwanese, sorry. So that's why Hokkien, but it's interesting because we all understand it as Taiwanese. So he said, I forgot what he said. He said, 你好吗? That means how are you?
Yeah. It's called
Yeah.
Hokkien in Singapore, but there is
Yeah,
a
sure.
Chinese equivalent. There's kanji
You also
equivalent. Yes.
understand it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
So that's why I
interesting.
said share the source, common source.
I mean,
Francine, I
I
have a
mean,
quick question for you. Typically, my experience is younger companies that, if they even have their own PR, if they lay off the actual employees, that they will contract with an outside company just in case they need to do a press release. I mean, generally
And
companies.
I'm always the outside company, and I get laid off first in a downturn, or I used to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, unless they think they have nothing to say, but if they have something to say, I mean, because you're an outside company, they could just rehire you in 2 seconds. I mean, it's right. It's
Yes,
that's
that was
Well,
that
the
was my
really
strength
shitty thing,
and my weakness.
just quickly, I heard like a really shitty thing that some companies are doing, specifically from the game industry. So, speaking with somebody from the game industry, they were telling me that some companies, and one company recently got caught doing this, which is, hey, an employee, how about we fire them and rehire them back as a contractor? And that might be something that will be happening more and more. The quote unquote hidden or fake employee, like, hey, this is
Oh,
a
oh yeah, they
non-employee.
do that all the time. Deloitte laid off my daughter and hired her off back as a contractor, and she's been working with them for the next 20 years. But she's happier as a contractor, and most people who get hired, fired, and laid off or whatever, and hired back as contractors are much happier because it gives them freedom.
Well, they
The
pay more
IR,
taxes, and the company pays less taxes. So that's.
exactly. The IRS is changing the rules on that.
Oh, okay. So maybe it won't be so shitty of a deal for those people in terms of taxes.
Well, or shittier. I don't know. The IRS is in the middle of deciding, and I can't remember where I read this, but Ken, I'm sure
no,
you've
no, but
read
it's
it.
not the IRS. It's the Biden administration and the Labor Department about what you could classify as contractors versus employees. The tax issues just flow from the classification. So the question is, what's the classification? But that's more of a Labor Department issue. About what's a contractor and what's an employee.
But
Uh,
that is changing. That is in the process of changing now. I just read something about it yesterday.
well,
In
but I'm not sure he'll get it through, but they're trying to change it. Yes.
So
oh,
the recent
okay.
story of Rooster Teeth, I think, is the one that I'm referring to. So the person, everyone else was making around 70. This person was making 30 or 40,000. A bunch of other issues were happening, but it's a pattern that I think too often companies do that, and without necessarily considering that, hey, maybe that's not even a livable wage for that person. So I think right now monetary policy says that maybe too many people have jobs and the wages are too low. So from the things that I've read, I would expect that a lot more people are going to become unemployed and wages will rise. Or is that too simplistic of
It's
a
not a
view?
wage issue when they do it. I mean, a lot of this stuff between employers and contractors are based on things like benefits and other liability laws, and this is where it is. So, I mean, if we change the stuff around the periphery, particularly healthcare and how we deal with healthcare, you wouldn't have this issue. Okay, but it's really not about wages per se. It's about everything else but wages. Why they want people to be contractors. It's literally that. It's everything else but wages. Okay. I mean, I was just reading. In fact, is David on stage? Yeah. And I don't know, David. I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't want to comment on it. Just
What's
really,
up?
reading an article about it, about like Uber and Lyft claiming they don't have to comply with ADA standards because they're not actually operating the cars. So there's been all sorts of discussion. Stories I've read about like Uber and Lyft drivers, not picking up disabled people or blind people. That if it was a cab company and the drivers work for the cab company, the cab company absolutely would be liable. But Uber and Lyft are basically saying they're exempt from these laws. So and that's what all this stuff has to do with contractors. It's not so much about the wages, it's all the work rules, it's benefits, it's all the other stuff around the periphery. Why they want everybody to be a contractor. But you can comment on if I'm
Yeah,
accurate.
that so how Uber tells drivers they have no choice but to help people regardless of their LGBTQA status, their disability. You're supposed to, if they say with service dogs, you have to, and everyone plays the bullshit card. Oh, this is my service animal. So they've tried to dodge responsibility and liability for everything along the way. This is no different. But they tell the drivers we'll deplatform you if you are serially not letting people in. So they try to enforce it that way. But of course, they don't want to take on any actual liability because there's going to be, you've got a sampling of average people driving. So how do they behave? They don't get paid anymore, so they're going to possibly take off and have a shittier experience. I don't know. I always pick people up, help people that have um, walkers, put that in my trunk, whatever. But I don't know how every other driver handles it, and I assume Uber has a problem there because they don't treat their drivers well enough for corner cases. There's no curb cut effect if you know the sociological research behind that.
So, do you expect your take-home cut to increase or decrease in light of this announcement or these
Oh,
kinds
I
of
stopped.
announcements?
This is not any announcement. I think this is to the drivers transparent. They don't know anything. This is a headline because there's been enough stories that now their public stance is Uber had to have hired Dr. Francine to say, "Hey, it's not our responsibility." So this is just that the public finding out that never have they assumed liability for stuff. Car accidents, it's always handled one on one. You're not suing Uber. There's arbitration clauses and all that stuff for it. I stopped driving because of this whole shit show. So, yeah, it's just not very economic. Ken and I talked about it.
Oh
It
yeah,
was a
you're not
great
doing it anymore. I
get
didn't
out of
realize
jail
that.
thing.
You stopped, David. You're not doing it anymore.
Yeah, I'm not. About a month ago, it's just, yeah, it was a fun experiment. I put, 70,000 miles on a Tesla this year. Got to do the EV experience. Great sampling, but I'm going to go be paid for my intellectual knowledge. This economy's not helped with me driving and meeting and talking and inspiring young people. It doesn't matter. You don't get any faith. Uh, I just think that a lot of people could get to know their community better if they got out in it and saw interact with real people in their real lives. That's basically what you can do when you drive for Uber, but you shouldn't perpetually do it because it's a way to goof off and transition between things and pay some bills, but it's not going to help you in a savings. Like nobody gets a economic foothold. Depends on the market, right? I don't know where there's different markets where some people can make a livable wage, but I wouldn't say Austin's one of those low cost places. Anyway, we can do a breakout room if you want to know all of that, but yeah, this is no major headline
Most
for anybody
people
that drives
said
for
that
Uber.
it put more mileage on their car and wear and tear on
Yeah,
their
you're
car
trading
than they
your
made.
time and mileage for cash today, with
Right.
the interaction with people and the vicissitudes of the time of day and type of traffic in your environment. Yeah. And I'm gregarious. I can talk to anybody about anything, so I don't care.
Okay,
Hello,
moving
there.
on. The Google launches news showcase in France, partners with more than 65 publishers. representing more than 130 publications, and will offer a limited amount of paywalled content for free. So they've launched News Showcase in France, aggregating all the news. DeFi proponents criticize Sam Bankman-Fried for a regulatory proposal suggesting websites facilitating trading on decentralized exchanges should be regulated. Right. Well, now you've got FTX and Coinbase playing the government-friendly roles of wanting lots of regulation that they can now afford to comply with. And now you've got the legit OG true DeFi or die crew who don't want the government getting involved at all. There's two very distinctly different camps here. The pro-government, which these big companies like FTX and Coinbase have no choice but to do. And then actually somewhere in the middle, you have CZ. And what's his exchange called? Somebody help me over my brain fart here.
Binance.
Binance, thank you. Which is trying to walk.
Binance.
I heard you. Thank you. I said Binance. Yeah, thank you. And Binance is walking a bit of a tightrope between government friendliness and true, off the grid exchange. Because when the real promise of Bitcoin, which is written in the kind of Genesis blocks, is that the system's going to collapse. And then that's when this decentralized currency will rise like a phoenix out of the ashes and reveal its true potential, which is it will be there when the traditional system fails. So who knows? We'll watch how this all plays out. But indeed, the ones that have big investors and have to comply. They really don't have any choice, even though theoretically or philosophically they might be now kind of conflicted. And Intel previews the next-gen Thunderbolt based on USB 4 version 2, up to 80 gigabit per second both ways, or 120 gigabit per second one way, and 40 gigabit per second the other way for video-intensive usages. So the backbones of the web are speeding up. SpaceX unveils Starlink Aviation, promising 20 millisecond latency. That's not bad. It's not good for gaming, but that's plenty good for any other non-gaming use case. And up to 350 megabit per second speeds in planes. That's plenty fucking fast. That's lickety-split fast. 20 millisecond, 350 megabit per second internet connection is fantastic for everything but gaming. It requires, and this would be for airplanes. So now SpaceX Starlink will work with commercial aircraft. This is fantastic. We now are going to have actual hauling ass internet speed on commercial flights now. Thank you, Elon Musk. He fixed one of the world's most painful problems.
I'll believe it when I see it.
But yeah, Ben, can you comment on the bandwidth possible when there's 80 people that are trying to stream video in one spot?
320 divided by 80. I mean, depend. It's
still
that's the
enough.
total.
That's still
It's
enough.
still pretty. It's still pretty good. It's still pretty good. Yeah, it's going to make a
And
big difference.
what capacity is that of Starlink? Because I thought the constellation was supposed to be in the tens of thousands in the end. So depending on what time in history you're looking at the bandwidth, though.
Well, it's going to be one receiver on the plane. You share it
Yeah.
amongst the people. You allocate the bandwidth fairly. It'll make a big difference.
It's the
Not
weakest
fairly.
link.
It's based on how much you pay. You pay per speed, man. You get 3 different.
Yes. How much you pay?
This
And
is
importantly,
Well, no. I'm thinking in terms of the satellites. So depending on how many satellites you have overhead will define how much maximum bandwidth you could have as a collective.
well,
That
just
can
a
be
single.
improved and changed in future. The good part here is now at least we have the capacity to use internet on flights and ships in water and other spaces. Another good news from SpaceX is they started ride sharing, $245,000 per ride share for payloads and stuff on their website. I saw yesterday. So future space travel coming to your doorstep.
Okay. So,
Aaron, you are the ultimate space optimist.
I am
Low Earth orbit,
ultimate
not
She is
space.
the
futurist
Elon Musk
optimist.
optimist.
Yes, Optimus Prime.
okay. Actually, here's a non-tick news one that I missed. China, according to Admiral Mike Gilday, the chief of U.S. naval operations, he said yesterday that China may invade Taiwan. Gilday's comments come after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken issued his own warning on Monday that Beijing was, quote unquote, determined to pursue reunification on a much faster timeline than was previously assumed. All that panda poking is starting to pay off, and they're going to fall into a trap of incredible sanctions globally, just as Uncle Sam intended. Oh, and what do we imagine with the Krishan area being deported or evacuated, or pick whatever word you like, setting the stage for a potential WMD attack? That's a weapon of mass destruction. Knowing full well that if Putin uses a single WMD in Krishan, his administration, the Kremlin, will be sanctioned to the highest degrees, which are previously only reserved for North Korea and Cuba. Now, do we imagine he's likely to do this? Yes, we do imagine this. Many people, including Carl Bildt, former and very highly admired foreign minister of Sweden, thinks that's exactly what he's going to do.
I actually think that we've actually kind of maxed out with sanctions for all intents and purposes
Oh,
with Russia. That's
no,
also
no, not at all.
what.
No, we haven't.
Well, you don't think so. I mean, David Sachs thinks so. I kind of agree with him. I mean, you're suggesting there's another level with you can go to where Cuba is, and you can go where we
No,
are with North Korea.
correct.
But understand that
I
even
can,
those
I can,
countries.
I can explain it to you like a 5-year-old if you want.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, there are still companies operating in Russia, that there are Americans working in Russia. If you tried to go to North Korea to do business of any kind, you would go to jail instantly.
Right, but my point is in these levels of sanctions. So we have sanctions. Let's say Cuba. Let's use Cuba, which I am familiar with.
Yeah.
Okay, even though we have sanctions on Cuba, the Canadians don't comply with them. So other Western countries are
Hey,
still doing business with Cuba.
But
So
we
this,
can't sell any telecom to Cuba, for example, because that'll cut us off from the American hand that feeds us.
I understand, but okay, but are well, okay,
Sanctions work, Ken.
yeah, but
yeah,
the, but
they work. That's how North Korea ended up with a bomb because they worked so well. Yeah, okay,
Not all the
No,
bomb.
no,
See,
just
yeah,
other
well,
implication of
yeah.
by example, China doesn't have a mRNA vaccine.
Yep, they don't.
But that was
well,
their
the
choice. We
Canadians
would have
helped
given
them
them.
Won't.
develop one,
We
actually.
would have given them an RNA
Yeah,
vaccine. They
they
didn't want it.
refuse to use foreign
Yeah,
or vaccine. That doesn't mean that's only uh, implies
Eh,
they don't want foreign.
yeah, and unlike by the way, Cuba and North Korea, I
Which
think
does.
Russia has greater self sufficiency ability than those two countries. So,
Yeah. By the way,
Nope,
um,
Cuba
I don't
has a
think so.
decent vaccine, COVID vaccine. By the way,
So China did buy a $500 million mRNA vaccine from Canada, but they worked on it collectively, I think, to some extent, with
That's a
in both
company
countries.
they bought, but in the end they develop another mRNA vaccine, but still hasn't got the EUA. So I think in the end they will stick with the Sinovac
Right.
because
My
they
point
stayed back.
my point is, we would love to cajole and China and Russia into making moves that will force the rest of the world to take the utmost North Korean like sanctions against them, where it will become um, instantly, significantly punishable, rather immediately, to do any.
Eating my banana and then leaving.
There we
I
go.
think Dr. Fran, you're off mute. You don't realize you're off mute.
Either that, or that was the most interesting,
Surreal input.
surreal comment. Okay, so
Interesting
anyway,
mic drop.
yes,
Sorry, guys.
Well, sanctions. The objective is to change the dynamics, right? So there's getting the citizens in the streets or more, which there are other actions that Putin's been taking to kind of you know add some frustration to Russian citizens, and then I guess he rescinded his last order, right? I think we covered that yesterday. But yeah, there is another level of sanctions, but the that's the game. That's the game. That's one of the scenarios is how will his use of weapon of mass destruction trigger internal and external pressures, and it's not clear that it will. I mean, we don't know. I mean, we got to generate those different scenarios.
yeah. Next up, from the Financial Times, they're having a look inside the UST Restitution Group, an association of nearly 4,400 crypto investors trying to track down Do Kwon. Did I not mention that he should use this opportunity to have a global Where's Waldo episode on social media? His TikTok videos would be the most, he would get more views than Mr. Beast. If you can find me, you get your crypto back. It would be truly phenomenal. Now that he obviously is hiding when you have nearly 5,000 people looking for you.
Yeah, he's a bit arrogant, right? He still tweets.
So
That's
here's what's happening. It is turning into a game show. These 4,000 plus investors are trying to track him down and are sharing their findings together on Discord. So it's a global manhunt, tech enabled manhunt. Um, I actually have a Writers Guild registration for precisely if someone were to try to turn this into a show, as our friends Ben Affleck and Matt Damon did with their Pearl Street Productions. And it's wild. I'm surprised nobody's really taken advantage of the tech that's now possible to do a global Where's Waldo type of uh, new generation of hide and seek on a global level.
maybe you should propose it to Mr. Beast. That would be a great theme for his YouTube.
There is precedent with the MIT red balloon um, experiment where they hid red balloons in various locations and crowdsourced teams found it.
Dubai is friendly to. They think he might be in Dubai. Another member said he worked for a fintech company headquartered in Hong Kong and had blown his savings for a house. We tracked him down pretty well when he was in Singapore, the trader said, but he added that his group lost track of Kwon after he left Singapore. Interesting. There's a lot of people trying to track him down. Okay. I still think somebody like Mr. Beast could make an incredibly fun, global, interactive manhunt based on TikTok videos, and you could multi-stream it to every platform like Twitter and Instagram and everything else. It could be an incredible amount of fun. Anyway, and he, being Mr. Beast, he could have a ridiculous prize because he has $1 million prizes every day for doing ridiculous stuff. He could have a potentially $100 million prize for something like this. A book excerpt details how the FBI failed to undertake fundamental reforms to combat cybercrime, including confronting escalating cyber threats like ransomware. A whole bunch of fundraising announcements as usual, and YouTube names Leo Olebe, who held executive roles in Google Play's game partnership unit, as head of gaming unit at YouTube. Exactly right. YouTube's going to go into gaming as well, for sure. A look at gradient accounts on Twitter that have color gradients as profile pictures, post viral relatable content, and are often accused of stealing tweets. So this is the Atlantic doing a piece on some of these interesting uh, Twitter accounts that they're calling gradient accounts. A phenomenon that they noticed last year, that the accounts, out of curiosity, felt they are shameless about retweeting themselves or tweeting several slightly different versions of a thought to see which would be the biggest hit. Does anyone have any experience with these Twitter gradient accounts? And they're recognizable by the fact that they don't have a face where you would normally show your face in a social media profile. It's just a colored dot with a gradient, like from red to green or blue to yellow or whatever. I had not heard of these either. I guess we'll pin that one for later to see what else comes along with that. IBM does its Q3 revenue report. Who cares? A study of over 1,000 U.S. adults YouTube
Well,
recommended.
Tyler, I actually think people should care because their numbers weren't bad, and everyone's talking about maybe we're going into a recession, and so I actually think people probably should have paid more attention. IBM, even though it may not be the company it was in the '60s in terms of market dominance, is still a pretty important company, and just gets ignored. It's
Well,
amazing.
with each report that comes in for these Q3 earnings reports, if the tech companies continue to have upside, have come out ahead, that's great news for the economy. It could prevent a really hard crash landing.
Well, the tech companies have been overvalued. The PEs have been that's been part of the problem, right? It's been all of the innovation, all of the bet on innovation financially has been just a fistful of companies, and that's what's part of what.
Yeah, but those are the hyper growth companies. IBM lost that status a long time ago.
Well,
Yeah,
they shifted to professional services, right? And
yeah.
then the scale, that's a totally different model, business model.
I'm saying
So,
so. IBM doesn't get valuations like that, so it's not in that category.
But they
right.
still have the most patents of any company, right? So that's kind of messed up.
Well, but they're not. Yeah, but that's the whole point. Is even if you have a tiny little itty bitty patent on things that are exploding, the people that are making the big margin are across the street, the fistful of companies.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
here we go. We're actually through the big boring tech headlines, and we can go into the tweets. Elon tweeted about the new Starlink airplane, and he says, um, "We did a Starlink video call on one airplane, which was in flight, to Starlink on another far away airplane, which was also in flight, and they did a Zoom call, and it worked perfectly with no lag." That's pretty cool, I gotta say. What an
How
interesting
many?
use case.
That is very cool. How many people are on the call?
And what's the quality?
Yeah, I'm just kidding. I mean, it's a great proof of concept, and it's going to build out, and they'll get more bandwidth going. So it is a new, definitely a new thing.
I'm really looking forward to it because when you are on long duration flights, all that time can be used for whatever you need to use it for through the Wi-Fi and calls and video calls and stuff. So can't wait.
And I'm looking forward to carbon taxing the flights too. That's going to be helpful.
Okay.
Hey, I just looked this up. I thought the statistic was interesting because I knew it was pretty dominant. That 44 of the 50 largest banks still use IBM, and that 86% of credit card transactions use their Z frame machines. I mean, this is still a relevant company. I mean, it just isn't cool because it's not growing, from zero. It's not going to be a unicorn because it already is a unicorn. I mean, it just put something in some perspective. That's all.
Yeah, well,
Keep
in terms
talking,
of
Ken.
patent,
You're making the shareholders smile. Keep talking.
well, I think in terms of patents, also they're pursuing quantum as the next big technology. So they have their hand in a few emerging markets. So I think it's just a matter of time before they break through again.
Okay. Eric, you just found one about, speaking of Elon Musk, Tesla humiliates Volkswagen and Mercedes.
Yeah, huge numbers, amazing. Like in terms of production, like everyone always thinks the Germans are amazing at making cars. I think there's just too much choice in that. Like each one of the cars in Tesla looks sexy. The electric cars from Volkswagen, I can't say they look even half as good as the Teslas, and I think people are voting with their dollar. So, in terms of the numbers, quite impressive numbers for 2022. Elon plans to ship on the order of 1 million. Meanwhile, Volkswagen is struggling on, I think, 100,000. But I don't know if anyone's seen that car, that Volkswagen electric car. But I think the Germans could do better.
Yeah, the Q3 earnings were posted yesterday. They produced 50% more cars in Q3, despite of all the supply chain issues and whatever, and a lot of growth in the energy sector, solar panels, battery, FSD is on the way, robo taxis in future, and the plan itself, to create more factories here. The Gigafactory in Austin producing really well, Model Y production, and then the Cybertruck coming up next. So company's doing really good production wise.
Yeah, the Cybertruck looks like a freaking space shuttle on the inside. Like if you've seen the dash and how all of the, it just looks wild. Like I never thought I'd be seeing cars like that within my lifetime. The only time that I've seen cars like that have like a center seat for the driver is usually sports cars. Semis usually have the two windows side by side. So really, really cool, different kind of look. So I bet people will buy a lot of that one too.
Okay. So next, Eric, you had another one. New research suggests that human brains use quantum computation. Scientists from Trinity College Dublin believe our brains could use quantum computation. Their discovery comes after they adapted an idea developed from computers, no doubt.
Yeah. So here's the section that I took apart. So the potentials, like the heartbeat evoked potentials, are normally not detectable with MRI, and the scientists believe they could only observe them because the nuclear proton spins in the brain were entangled. Now, the Nobel Prize was given for the non-local nature of reality because we have these Bell inequality violations where you look at statistics and the correlations seem to be much, much beyond just random probability. In fact, you can skew things in some instances like 77, 78%, I think, for some of the density matrices. So the human brain does kind of what physicists suspected. Some physicists, others said the brain only works in a classical fashion. So, in terms of algorithms, even, this might be an interesting thing to pursue to say, hey, look, we're going to expand these neural network models now to work in a fashion that exploits entanglement. And in fact, that's what researchers with quantum computers are doing. So, quantum consciousness, I guess, might be something on the horizon very, very soon. But nice to see that quantum biology is finally getting the consideration it deserves, so to speak.
Okay,
I
Tom,
think
you go ahead.
Thank you. I think these are really exciting, but to call them quantum computing may be overstating what's going on. It's just quantum effects that are being detected. And quantum measurement and quantum communication also are quantum effects that are happening in nature, which is why we're trying to exploit them. But if you're trying to do a quantum mechanics, for example, experiment, well, nature is doing that every day. That's not quite computing. It's important to note
Well,
that.
it's whether the computing works at the scale of the phenomena. And so this is one piece of evidence where I would say, hey, now let's take a closer look. Maybe there are some other effects, because it does seem like the signals within the brain experience this kind of detection. So if the detection is there, I would say interface or interaction. That implies some sort of process that might be responsible or somehow related to the computing. So in a
Right,
weak
but
sense, that
that
would be my suspicion.
no, I think all of that is correct. I just think to call it computing requires a redefinition of what computing is to be any sort of transformation.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I would classify
So that's not
almost
quite
any
computing.
interaction.
It's not like we have code and somebody's coding it and then you run it, you
Oh,
know.
yeah, yeah, that's a great distinction. Absolutely. Agree with that.
Okay, so Tom Ryan found this one that I'm retweeting now. Internet connectivity worldwide impacted by a severed EU subsea cable. A major internet subsea cable in south of France was severed yesterday, causing connectivity problems in Europe, Asia, and the US. And Tom says, as part of his tweet, that France feared that this would happen days ago, and now it has happened, and that's kind of interesting. Is Tom on stage to comment about that? Not at the
He's
moment.
not.
Okay. Well, if he should pop back in, let me know. We'll bring that back up. And the next one's from Valerie, that Amazon faces $1 billion lawsuit in the UK for favoring its own products, for damages of up to $1 billion over allegations the online marketplace abused its dominance. Which, I love Amazon, but let's be real, they of course they're going to do that to the degree that they can, and because they probably made far more than a billion doing that, tens of billions, in fact. So even with the $1 billion fine, it might have been totally worth it. The next one is from Jeff G. Russian aircraft fired a missile near a British plane over the Black Sea. A Russian plane released a missile close to a British aircraft as it patrolled over the Black Sea on September 29. Defense Minister Ben Wallace revealed today. Well, that's how you could trigger a world war, or because you would be, that's NATO. Um, I'm not sure Russia wants to fuck with that.
Yeah, this was a surveillance aircraft with a very sophisticated software-defined radio on it, hoovering up all of the signals coming from that area, anywhere near mobile phone calls, everything. You know, you just capture everything and worry about decoding it and tuning into it later. That's how they work. And it was protected by two typhoons, Eurofighter typhoons. That's all I know. It sounds like the Russians accidentally, on purpose, did something, you know, just to be arse like they do, be arseholes. But yeah, I don't think anybody was hurt, and I don't think there was any serious threat. That's what it looks like. But that's the background. It was a surveillance aircraft up there doing electronic capture of signals in the area.
Okay.
I did read a tweet from the Institute of War that Russians are planning on a false flag operation or attack near the electric plant in Kherson, the false flag, and also saw a kind of a television clip. It was in Russian language, but translated in English, where people sitting commenting on how Americans or Europeans are going to, or even Ukrainian, are going to blast a bomb, like a nuclear bomb, and blaming it on Russia. So they are like paving the way and spreading propaganda already for the false flag operation, according to the Institute of War.
Okay. On a similar topic about spy planes, David sent in this one. It says, "Here's all the information that cabin crew can see about you on their iPads when you fly. Passenger information list and Passenger Plus systems began as a way for cabin crew to identify passengers with a tight connection and help them rebook while still mid-flight. That's fantastic. And of course, there's a dystopian dark flip side to that coin as well. Today, cabin crew are able to see a wealth of data points on each passenger in the cabin. Each airline's system displays different information, but there is some information that has become industry standard to pass on to the crew. I can quote, I can use the seat map to see that if there are empty seats, that I can utilize those better. And while they cannot see how much you paid for your ticket, they are able to see if you're a frequent flyer with the airline, and if so, your status. Other airlines like United use the system to keep track of customer satisfaction. Cabin crew could use the airline save data to wish you a happy birthday, congratulate a couple on their anniversary, etc. Now let's be real. If you're an asshole during the flight, are we to assume that they don't make record of that? Or if you get refused to wear a mask or refused to comply with an order from a flight attendant, uh, are we to assume that they're not making record of that? You better bet your bottom dollar they are. And they want to know when
I
they
mean,
have.
it's allowing CRM information right there for and that it actually makes a lot of sense, right?
I still believe there's an opportunity to create the a consumer database that companies would pay to contribute to and share. It would be incredibly valuable. And it would need to be done in an interesting way for compliance reasons. But to know that somebody damaged a hotel room, or if Uber could, in some way, under some circumstance that was compliant with data regulations, about is somebody's Uber score shareable? For example, it's not their email, it's not their phone number. It's Uber's proprietary information about somebody. Why shouldn't they be able to share that with Airbnb, which also has a rating about every user in their platform? And why shouldn't both of them be able to share it with some hotel chain, which also has tons of data? And you can see how this could be a snowball of data where companies, it would be a marketplace of data where companies would pay to have access to and share and grant access to other partners that they don't mind sharing their proprietary data with.
So, Tyler, do you think that would create an atmosphere of better behavior once people knew that their information was
I
being
know
shared?
I know for a fact it would,
Yeah, rhetorical question.
because every resort host knows that's a rhetorical question, because Airbnb hosts perform remarkably better than Booking.com hosts, which are even slightly better than walk-in guests who have relatively little accountability. And Airbnb guests are the only ones that get reviewed, and uh, they behave far better because of the knowledge that they know they're going to be reviewed. And if they value their score, which will impact their ability to get rooms in the future, then of course they're going to behave better. I also believe Uber riders started behaving better when it became known publicly that the drivers were rating the riders.
Well, they also became better when they saw that some of them were filming them too, right?
Oh yeah, the driver cams. Yeah. Um, so yeah, it's again the American corporatized version of uh, you know what China does in their unique way, in a very top-down authoritarian type of way. America at times and comes to similar um, conclusions, but taking a very different, more market-driven approach of corporate surveillance and whatnot. But the net effect could be a whole more civil society. Potentially, could be one of the big benefits. And I feel like, strangely, Singapore seems to have a unique approach to this that seems to work quite well for them.
Singapore
So,
is a place. It's a paradise for good people, but it's a hell for bad ones.
exactly right. Yeah. And it's already achieved its main objective, which is if you're a bad actor, you're going to get the fuck out of Singapore. You have no interest in going to Singapore. You're not going to have.
Exactly.
You're not going to
Exactly.
have
The
a good
only
time
people
there.
I know that have problems with Singapore are the ones that, and I'm talking about people that have lived there. They're the ones that couldn't wait to get back to the States where their kids could run around and be badasses.
I think it's how much of your own personality you want to give in. So I think if Americans, okay, sorry, that's a little stereotype. I mean, if you are too strong or your personal opinion, too having too much individualism, that is not the country for you.
But I'm curious, Albert. Why? No, Robert. Why did you say that the parents, the American parents, want their kids to be badass?
Oh, well,
Is there something to do with their parenting?
well, when I'm saying badass, of course, it's a hyperbole or a little stretch, but they're okay with their kids running around breaking things, and they go, oh, they're just growing up, they'll be okay,
No, they can
you
break
know.
things. They cannot do things that's against the law, right? Like vandalism, for example.
Here in the States, I'll tell you, and I'm a suburban kid. Come on, I've seen a lot of people get like, oh, well, they're just a child or they're just a teen, they'll grow out of it, and the things that they do is more than just breaking things. So anyway.
Sure, let me ask you, like like you have this compulsive savings for young people, right? To ask young people to save their money for the house. So that
What's
is
going on in New York?
way to do that,
Crazy.
right?
Look at
Common.
So
this.
I mean,
Look at this
because
shit.
if
Look
I'm
at this shit.
your
In New York
government
Times
asks
Square.
people, some people, especially the
Wow.
young people, to save partial of their income for the housing.
Oh, you
That's
mean
what's going on
CPF?
in New
Yes,
York.
yes. So
Uh,
yeah, I
Crazy. Look
mean,
at this.
not.
Actually, it's not true
Look
because
at this shit.
basically, I
Look
think
at this
it's a
shit.
kind of a pension system,
In
but it's
New
not
York
pension.
Times
Of course,
Square.
it's kind of I
Wow.
don't know how to call it. But it's basically to teach you how to save from young for old age. You have the money there, but the money there you can use for investment, for buying houses, for buying stocks, buying gold investment or whatever thing. Those investment that the government deem is safe. So of course it's a bit of like a parent-child relationship, but yeah, in Singapore they do encourage people to save their, to have a savings from their income so that they won't get into a situation whereby they run out of choices and yep, they go dry because of
Yeah, yeah,
some
but
bad
I
decisions they made in
mean,
life.
the government is actually doing good things because
Of course.
yeah, because they control the price of the housing and try to make everyone to have their own house. So even as enforcement, this saving thing is a bit like you have to do it. So just like you said, parents and children thing, but parents uh, of good faith. But
I think it's just a different style of running the country, but okay, I can
but
tell you something. Politicians in Singapore is not easy. It's a thankless task. Whatever policies they come up with, they must be able to think about it in all corners so that nobody will complain. So they have to make sensible decisions. If not, yeah, the people will not be happy, and they will very easily know it if they are not happy, and they need to. The basically the population need to be convinced of whatever policies or whatever strategy they want to take.
yeah, yeah. So my point is, if you don't agree the system, that means you have better to leave Singapore. So it's like if you join this, otherwise you just leave. That
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of attitude. Yeah,
But there are many people from other countries always that expect say they always say that they want to raise their family in Singapore because it's safe, it's good education, and yeah, the people will become more civil if, well, yeah, more law abiding, right?
We love Singapore, and I'll be there next month.
Oh, welcome.
Okay, next up, a Poppy found a really interesting, fun little website called playphrase.me that I just retweeted. The website that lets you type in a phrase and shows you clips from movies where characters say that phrase. So I'm going to type in tech bro, of course, and let's see if they come up with anything for tech bro. Well, the interface could use some work. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. Let's see. Or no movie mentions the word tech bro. How's it going?
How's it going? I asked you, how's it going? So how's it going?
So I typed in the phrase "how's it going," and then it did instantly find a whole lot of clips with the phrase "how's it going." That's kind of interesting. Okay, next up is Hong Kong tries to reverse expat exodus with housing tax cut and a new visa. The Hong Kong chief executive unveiled a plan to woo back foreign talent and ease housing woes to revive the city's status as a thriving international finance hub.
They could do that by bringing back the rule of law.
The city also plans to increase the number of people allowed to gather in public, with the substantial tweak to one of the most criticized COVID rules, marking another gradual step towards reviving its reputation. Good luck. It's over. It's done. People don't want to live in communist China, and so they're moving to Singapore and anywhere else. And how did you not account for this? It's weird. What else? Jeff Bezos and Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon think a recession is inevitable. So that's cheerful news. And that's about it for today. We have Ken's from 17 hours ago. Twitter froze staff stock accounts in a concrete sign. Elon Musk's takeover deal is close to completion. And there you go. That's it.
Tyler, that
Yes.
I just saw this is from South Morning China, South China Morning Post. It says Chinese physicists simulate a nuclear blast against the satellites, and it says computer experiment suggest warhead detonated in near space could disable threats such as Elon Musk Starlink satellites. That that
Back
is
to Kessler syndrome. Yes.
yeah. I think the timing of this article is interesting.
Okay, I have it right here. I just retweeted it. Chinese physicists simulate nuclear blast against satellites. Computer experiment suggests a warhead detonated in near space could disable threats like a SpaceX Starlink satellite. Yeah, and people are wondering why Elon is so lately has been tweeting things that seem to be a bit pro Kremlin and a bit pro Beijing. And
But do we not think that we've also modeled this too? I mean, it's just something everybody's modeled, right?
well, not against Starlink specifically, but sure against
Oh
satellites.
yeah.
Yeah, this is like, hey, look, we have the computer chips to run this simulation. Imagine what we can do when we actually make these weapons. So I think that's also part of the subtext here that, hey, technology enables you to make a threat with something as simple as a simulation.
Hey, I just messaged something to Cheryl that I didn't tweet out, but it's an interesting article. So, Cheryl, are you there? So you should post it. You see,
Yes, I'll pick it up now. Go ahead.
yeah, you see it, yeah. So it's a thing from the Daily Beast regarding. I mean, do you have it in front of you? Because I have to go switch screens to go read it again.
Yep, I'll do it now.
Yeah,
On the recession discussion, what we're what we are beginning is a restructuring of the global economy. We've got a decoupling regarding global supply chain. We have an increase in investment that needs to go in our food supply to build some resilience because of the climate effects and episodes that it has on food harvesting and distribution. And then we have, with a little catalyst with creating unions, and just even the threat that poses, we're going to have an increase in wages, which has been a long time coming, I guess. So this is not your Manila whatever recession. This is a much deeper restructuring that we need to do, but it's gonna be it's there's a bunch more question marks than just a recession. How you get out of a recession?
Well, yeah, what you mentioned, I think the low wages might be part or a confounding factor why birth rate is so low. Because if both people have to work so hard, less people are inclined to have families. So maybe the government is now listening. Hey, people want a livable wage. Hey, how about we make it livable for families to actually raise kids, for at least one of the people to have a career, and for them to be happy, not just miserable all the time in a rat race.
Birth rate. So if when you look around the world, and if you were to segment the different cultures and societies, you have certain societies that have a much higher birth rate, um, and children per family than in some other societies. So that your point is really more around one specific segment. The other segment is just empowering women is going to be helpful to kind of reduce the overpopulating that we're doing to the planet.
Oh, well, I don't think we're overpopulating. If anything, for example, America's birth rate dropped from 1.47 to 1.4 during the time of the pandemic, or since the start of the pandemic. And you need 2.1 to maintain a population. So if there's a population contraction, then how does that work out in the economics? I don't think any of the models were ever built to go in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question on this real quick.
Eric, Eric,
Uh,
if I can respond to that
okay,
real quick, I
yes.
think it's a false problem. We are clearly overpopulated on this blue marble. When people say you need for economic reasons, you need growth, blah blah, it's all BS. Yes, there's a silver boom that's hitting China. It's going to be hitting countries as they have to weather through it. But to say the equation, the calculus of life, clearly states in very simple black and white terms that we're using too much resources. We have too many people. The culture that we have that we've exported is is very problematic. So the idea that the population is another growth factor that should go up and to the right is nonsense.
No, no, just have a stable population. Japan population contracted for the first time in history, right?
Yeah, it contracted, but the Japanese culture and society and country is still pretty solid. So, David, totally aligned with you. The one thing that people should look at is 100 years ago, look at, or beginning of last millennium, look at where the world population was and where it is today. Um, that is a significant burden on the biosphere for the Earth. And so population does have something to do with it. The other thing is, David, I totally agree with you. We also used to deal with this in business where people would say, hey, my business grew because my number of clients grew or my number of stores at Walmart grew. And we're like, yeah, but that's sort of a level of fake growth too. So what is your level of real growth? So growing with the population may not always be the right answer. There could be some other economic ways we could look at things other than sheer growth out of just population.
Yeah,
And
but
according to the global, charting, I think a week ago. I was looking at it. Indian population is going to surpass all by, I think 2035, and the numbers are just astonishing. So population growth is an issue for the entire globe.
We had less than we had less than 2 billion people, maybe a billion and a half, what, before World War I, and now we're like scratching what, 8 billion. I mean, think about if you had a simple household and you went from 2 to 8, and your household was constant, even if you had more space, or a big mansion, you'd start bumping into each other. And I'm just talking about that in a funny manner. So it is a concern.
Nigeria may overtake India by mid-century.
Harmony. Forget
Okay.
growth. It's harmony. That's what we need to do.
Okay,
Uh,
so I think that article disappeared, but Cheryl had pinned this article, which I thought was interesting, from the Daily Beast. It was almost like, I guess it was an opinion piece, but it was talking about the powers of social media CEOs. I mean, they were using Kanye West, but they also talked extensively about Elon Musk and the power of in a handful of individuals, unelected, in the new world. So, I mean, I don't know if she's going to pin that back up so that people wanted to see it. It's from the Daily Beast. You can Google it. It's not paywalled. So
Yeah, I did it again.
yeah.
Do you want to so-called go through a little bit more? If not, I think Tyler wants to close the room already.
yeah, the headline says Kanye West reminds us that social media CEOs have way too much power.
While himself becoming potentially a social media CEO.
I would like to remind Kanye West and his team and everyone else that they need to take care of their mental health first before making on any statements online, because his behavior have less to do with. Um, I don't want to comment on his mental health, but he has been exhibiting and tweeting and sharing and acting not in a very good way, and especially towards his family and what he's doing. I'm not sure what's going on with him. He himself is not a very safe person.
But it's beyond, the article's beyond Kanye West. They're talking about Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Peter Thiel. All of those were mentioned in that article. It's more about the genre, if you will, of billionaire CEOs who control media companies.
It's
Yeah,
it's a psychology in our culture of celebrity culture. That's the underlying problem. Before social media kind of emerged and transformed the way we get information, we had the problem before, but now just the way that influence is gained through virality and all these things, it's something that we have. The symptom is that, and the problem is, like, we're going to people like Elon and David Sachs for geopolitical insights or what have you. I mean, and it's just natural for us to kind of do that because it's in our face, it's in Twitter, it's in the algorithm. But it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd to go to Elon Musk for geopolitical advice. But he's got so much power and such a following that when he says something, there's this big pulse that hits our culture. So I mean, the problem is the way we think, how we just have this celebrity culture in our psychology.
Well, we we could also take some responsibility for a gullible population. We shouldn't be so easily, uh, pers- manipulated by social media. People shouldn't take what they see on Facebook or Instagram. They should be able to have a critical thinking ability, a level of ability to discern kind of a level of trustworthiness from things they read on the internet, which tragically, sadly, they seem to lack the ability to do. And that's fundamental to why it is so power. It's only powerful because people are incapable, seemingly have a limited capacity for um, attaching the right amount of value to the information that they're reading.
But Tyler, we're cyborgs. Our species now with smartphones, and with just the prevalence of our social media apps in our home screen, a few apps that are on your home screen, we have been rendered largely helpless against that. I totally, in terms of accountability, totally agree. But that's just not the digital bio reality that we as humans have right now. Just because communication and our quest for information with Google and just the algorithm is just right there. So it's unless you literally reject, and some people do this, right? There's a small segment of people that just do exactly what you're suggesting, which is they know the problem. The problem is just put down your phone, So
Well, it's not as simple, David, because there are people actively spreading this kind of mindset, which is fear based in authorities or expertise of people are being questioned. And there is like this inner kind of undoing of knowing who to look for in terms of who's like somebody spending years and ages on researching something, and their expert advice is totally different than a person just listening to something and repeating it, but having a huge social media following, or being a celebrity or a politician even. So we saw that during pandemic that politicians made a point to comment on medicine or stuff that they had no knowledge of, and people were just listening to them. Not only on social media, there are older people who don't use their phone, but they go to these gatherings, churches, they go to schools or colleges where they are indoctrinated. There are other kind of, it's just top to bottom, bottom up, complete brainwashing of people that's happening for the benefit of the few who are manipulating the masses. And social media is just another tool for them. They have been using different tools. The problem is with this kind of ideology that is intentionally being now spread out and permeating through our entire fabric of, you know, reality. We fail to not only use our critical thinking, we fail to recognize that this person, his words are different than somebody else's. So it's all about whose side we are on, the political alignments, and I'm going to listen to this person because he's a Democrat, and I'm going to listen to that person because he's a Republican, or based on religion, or based on caste, or based on color. So many divisional, grouping that's happening. Social media is just being used as a tool by these people. So my problem is both with these people, these idea makers, these society kind of mindset builders, and there are a few of them out there.
Okay, there we have it. Let's do it again tomorrow for Friday, and have a wonderful rest of
Oh,
your Thursday.
Ben has a room. I'm not sure whether
Have a
he
great
was at the
Thursday,
top of
Tyler.
the